Marie's here with us today. Thank you for joining us, Marie, from Marketing CoPilot. Always a pleasure to speak with you. You always have some really great insights to share with the group, and I always learn something from these sessions with you. So I am going to turn it over to you. Just in case you guys don't know, I'm Monica Hoyer. I'm the marketing director here at Influence. I've been working in the digital space for over 25 years and have a lot of experience in email marketing, a lot of experience in just digital marketing as well. And it's a pleasure to be with you today on this beautiful Wednesday in June. So Marie, now it's over to you.
Thanks so much, Monica. And thank you to the entire team at Influence for having me in today to host this session. I hope you do have a lot of good takeaways, and I hope you have a chance to take some notes and start putting some things into action. As Monica mentioned, my name is Marie Wiese. Please do connect with me on LinkedIn, and please do email me if you have any questions after the session that you want to take a deeper dive on or you didn't have a chance to ask. We'll do some Q&A at the end. I am the president of Marketing CoPilot. We call ourselves a digital selling agency. And the reason we do that is because we help business-to-business companies take their sales process and put it online so we can build trust with potential buyers and get to know them before we try to sell to them. I also run a podcast called The Common Sense Professional. I've written a couple of books, and I am a self-proclaimed marketing automation geek. I love marketing automation, and I love what marketing automation is bringing to the marketplace these days, and how the lines are really starting to blur between what we're doing in marketing and what we're doing in sales, breaking down those pillars so that we can align ourselves as marketers with sales revenue and really help businesses win. So I'm going to jump right into it right now. And I want to share with you 3 compelling facts that I'm sure you're aware of. And I want to do a bit of an overview on these 3 compelling facts. Everybody in the last 24 months, it didn't matter where you were, you must have been hiding under a rock if you weren't feeling this, but people want to go online and they want to meet you and find out about you. And they want that information up front. And whether you like it or not, all roads do lead to your website. And that web content that you get to own and manage is how you have the opportunity to really make a good first impression. And the other thing we noticed though about this, and we worked with a company a couple of years back that did a very exhaustive study online, about 2,600 companies. They would go online as a secret shopper, make inquiries through their website to see what would happen. And we know that about 50% of leads are getting mismanaged on a company's website. If an inquiry gets made, a chat box, whatever it happens to be, a lot of companies end up being very focused on, are you ready to buy right now? And if you're not ready to buy right now, they don't really have an offer for you, or they don't have engagement. And the last thing that we know to be true, and we look at a lot of research from a company out of Serious Decisions in the US, lead nurturing drives more sales at less cost. So the better you are at not just starting that relationship, but nurturing that relationship, the better you will be at driving more sales at less cost. And I know my friends at Influence can talk a lot about this topic because they will have built software to support this whole process. So I'm going to dive into a couple of other things right now. And as I said before, a lot is happening out in the market. And when I say the market, I really do mean online. And there's a lot of things where people are looking for information. And I appreciate this picture looks linear, but what I'm noticing more and more is that the buying process is no longer linear. It jumps all over the place, and you never know when people are in and out of cycle. It might be driving interest through social media, digital ads. You might be doing some networking and PR that is making people aware of you. When they become aware of you, though, they're going to go look you up. And oftentimes that is right at your website. And that's where there's a critical transition stage that happens where you're trying to determine as a marketer, or should be trying to determine as a marketer, if you have a marketing qualified lead. Well, what's a marketing qualified lead? It's somebody who hits your website and doesn't bounce after 5 seconds, potentially does something on your website and absolutely comes back. And that's where we notice some really ugly stats in Google Analytics, which is high, not just high bounce rates, but returning visitors versus net new visitors is often skewed at net new over 90%, returning less than 10%. And if you really want to engage and create a marketing qualified lead, your returning visits have to be at least 50%. So that's one thing you could do today. You could go back and look at your Google Analytics, and you could see whether or not you have a really nice balance of new and returning. Now, what happens then after marketing has an opportunity to either manually or through the support of marketing automation, figure out where that person is in the buyer journey, and if they think it's time to pass it to the sales team, and if the sales team can take it and become a sales qualified lead. That's where it then goes into your system as a qualified lead, and lead management will happen. And then hopefully it's going to turn into an opportunity to close sale. And then if it's not, it usually comes back to the marketing team to continue to nurture over time. So your website plays a pivotal role from a number of perspectives. It's the doorway in from the online world. It's then the doorway to tracking and figuring out where somebody is in their buying cycle. And then it's the doorway back to keeping in touch and continuing to build that relationship. And that works through landing pages. It works through dynamic content like blogs. It works through static content like the useful information on your website that people are using to make a buying decision. So I think it's really important today for management teams, when they sort of beat up on the marketing department and say, why should we be spending more money on this? It's really important for you to be able to present a really strong story to your management team, which is because our website is acting as our receptionist, our intro to sales, our intro to the company. It's doing a whole bunch of things, and it's open 24 hours a day. Monica, I'm sure you've seen this with a lot of influence clients. Wouldn't you agree that the website is really the cornerstone and foundation?
Yeah, also because it's really an easy way for people to not only, as you said, get to know you and see more about your products and services, but it's also an easy way for them to find the contact us form or some sort of way to submit their information to say, your products and services are of interest to me. And that's where they fill out the form. You're not going to fill out a form on social media necessarily. Now, some B2C companies will see that, but on the B2B side, you're really going to gather that lead information or that person raising their hand to say, yes, I'm interested in what you have to sell me. And that's going to happen on your website.
Right. And even if they're not ready yet to buy something, they're trying to get to know you, and they're trying to understand what are the things that you might potentially be able to help me with.
Yep.
So one of the things that we've studied really closely out over the last 15 years, and I've been in marketing for about 30, but in the last 15, I've really started to pay attention to how the world has changed because of the digital first buyer. Now, before the pandemic hit, your buyer was on one side, you were on the other, and there in the middle was confusion and clutter, usually around what should I do? What's my next step? How should I approach this? There's a lot of choice out these days. There's not one company that I have worked with in the last 10 years who, when I did a Google search on their product or their product line or their service line or whatever way they position themselves in the market, I would do a search on that topic and at least 1 million search results would come back. I don't know if you're like me, Monica, but I don't go past page 1 very often of search results. And I don't really dig to the bottom to find like who's the millionth person on page 494. Yep. And so you can imagine that for a buyer doing a thorough research, just even going through the details on page 1 is exhausting. And there's a lot of confusion, clutter, friction, a lot's happening, and it creates buyer anxiety. Now, what happened after the pandemic or during the pandemic? Your buyer was now not only worried about their own anxiety of purchasing something for their business or purchasing something at all, but suddenly they took into consideration family health, world health, what was going on with the local economy. They were looking at the health of their own business. They were looking at data. They were looking at unsubstantiated data, and the confusion just got worse and worse. So now you can see the 6 degrees of separation just got even more complex for that buyer and moved you further out in the decision-making process. So what do we need to do to engage a digital buyer or somebody we want to get to know, and primarily today that's getting to know them online. How do we build trust? Well, I think we would agree in any relationship we form in our lives today, it doesn't really matter what it is. If we can say we've got a long-lasting relationship with someone, it usually has to do with these four things. There's familiarity. We're remembered when a problem arises with somebody, and they remember, oh, I need to call that person. They had a good solution. We enjoy the relationship with somebody because they offer value. And, somebody who's always there with the right information when something happens and always has the right sort of advice to provide, that's valuable. Longevity. They've been around for a while. They weren't just somebody who set up shop in the last 4 months and decided they were going to sell something. There's longevity there. And then consistency, that you hear from them regularly. And even if you unsubscribed from their list, there's always information you're seeing about them on LinkedIn, or there's other ways they're getting in touch. So today, in order to build trust, we need familiarity, value, longevity, and consistency. So how do we lose trust? And I'm sure this is not a surprise to anybody on the call today, especially if you're in sales or you're in marketing. I think you would agree, even probably through some of the tests you've done in your own business, that if you move too fast to selling before a relationship has been established, you lose trust. We all know that spamming people does not pay off. Cold calling people does not often pay off. And even though, we have to do hard work to get people to be aware of us and to decide whether they're challenged that they're struggling with, and that's why they want to go look for a solution. We have to really understand how they want to build that relationship, and we have to really understand what to offer them. If we have a message that's confusing and sounds like everyone else, and I do a lot of work in the Microsoft channel as an example, and there's a lot of partners in that channel, and I can go to 10 websites and they're all saying the same thing. They're selling security or cloud services, and that's what they're leading with, their products. They're not leading with their value. And that message is confusing for people because they don't know, if there's no differentiation, why would I pick one or the other? If you lead your buyer to a landing page or a place on your website, I'm going to use an example. This is a pet peeve of mine. Again, I've worked with a lot of clients who do pay-per-click advertising, and they do a lot of time. They spend a lot of time and effort figuring out keywords and ads. And then when somebody clicks through after they get served up an ad, they go to the homepage of the website. And if you were actually offering something very specific and I just land there and now I have to figure it out for myself, or if I did do the work to create a landing page or web page and that web page makes no sense, there's no trust, there's no value on that page, you're going to lose people. If you have content void of any discernible value to the buyer, you're going to lose people. And obviously, I mentioned before, annoying email spamming or stalking people on social media. And we're starting to see the rise of that right now on LinkedIn. And I've got a lot of people who are starting to question whether LinkedIn has still got the benefits it did before, because there seems to be a lot of clutter and confusion on there as well. But we know that's how we lose trust. So what do we need to build a marketing sales funnel? And there's 4 key elements that you need, and you need to put these everywhere you can think of that you're online. You need a value proposition that creates curiosity. It creates differentiation between you and your competitors, but it's clear. It has an emotional trigger to it, to the buyer and what they're trying to accomplish. You need a web page that makes you money. And by that, what I mean is an email address today of a person in just a general network can be valued of up to $20 to $30. One that is in our target market can be valued at $100 to $120. So we need to have an offer and something really good there that's going to make us money. We need that valuable offer that will generate an email address, and then we need an email campaign that builds familiarity and trust. And it really is quite this simple. But when I do a lot of analysis on websites today, I notice that a lot of people don't have this information clearly. They don't have this structure clearly designed on their website. I'm going to tell you in a minute what needs to be there. So let's just recap on that. You need a value proposition that's clear. and differentiates you. You need a web page that's clearly organized with an offer that gets that email, and then you need really good content to put into email campaigns to continue to build trust. So, a couple of topics that you might want to tackle here. You might want to look to see engagement levels and sources of contacts. So you're going to want to see within those contacts that you have, that you're either working with in an existing list or people that you've started to build. You want to understand different data from lead sources. You want criteria for hot leads that need to be nurtured. You want best practices for sales to engage. A lot of times marketing team doesn't sit down and ask the sales team, how do you qualify people and how could I qualify them out right on a web page? You want roles and responsibilities in the life cycle of a lead, and you need to be able to define things like, what is the definition of a lead? When does sales give a lead back to marketing? And do you have lead scoring criteria? Is it accurate? Is it what you all want to look at? So these are some of the things that you might want to tackle as you're building this. Oftentimes, we like to look at engagement by lead source. We look at the source, the criteria that we have for either putting them in or out of that marketing sales funnel, what the next step is, when we would stop a response, or what is our definition of a bad lead. Okay, so these are all things that we would want to start to capture. Now, I'm sure a lot of people have seen this. We know there are, we like to say there are 5 distinct categories in the buyer journey: awareness, consideration, conversion, loyalty, and then advocacy. And often conversion is shared by the sales and marketing team. But once you get to loyalty and advocacy, that's often the responsibility of your customer service, your customer engagement. So it's one thing to buy something, and it's one thing to buy something over and over again, but they don't really become advocates until they start telling other people. And so we still want to track all of that. And it's really important for us to know that. But the job of the marketing team is really to support awareness and consideration, and then own some form of conversion. So, awareness might be things like our business development efforts, our email marketing, our LinkedIn programs. Consideration might be that we've set up workflows with case studies or things like that. So it's really important that you want to have a contact overview as you're starting to build your marketing sales funnel. You want to know what you have happening in each one of these stages, and you want to know how you're going to track and measure everything. Now, we always like to look at lead scoring and positive attributes. And I think that's really important for you to sit down with your sales team and have a conversation about what is the positive attribute of a lead. So, back in the early days of forms and form filling, I remember a lot of clients used to get quite frustrated by saying, well, there's, a bunch of email addresses in the database now, and it's just people trying to sell us something, or SEO services or something like that. And so they say those aren't real leads. And so, I noticed that as we were moving from manual to automated processes, that it was really important to start figuring out how to weed those things out and take them out. And a lot of ways you can do that is really by creating positive attributes and assigning a score to it. Monica, I think you'd agree that today this is one of the biggest challenges for marketing teams, is figuring out what those attributes should be and how to work with sales. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, when you bring up lead scoring to a marketer, if they don't have one in place, they kind of cringe. And they're like, oh, yeah, I have to do that. Because it's a large task. But you can learn a lot about not just your audience as you're setting it up and implementing it, but also about all of your marketing materials. Because if you've assigned a score of, let's say, 10 out of 100 to a specific piece of content, and no one's clicking on it, or no one's downloading it, then they're not far enough down the funnel. Maybe it's attributed to too high up the funnel, whatever it might be. So you're going to have to, once you do this, kind of move those levers a little bit. And once you get feedback from your sales team, start to understand really who they're talking to. Maybe they're talking to somebody with a contact score or lead score of 5, and they're converting. So then what that person consumed wasn't rated high enough. Or you're, as I said, you're giving too high of a score to a piece that nobody's consuming or that people aren't using further down the funnel. So it's really moving those levers and taking the time to actually implement that contact score and that lead score is worth it in the long run, because it will help you really identify who your leads are and identify what pieces of content you need for your funnel.
Exactly. So, one thing it never occurred to me, and this is why I love marketing automation so much, is that there's also negative attributes. Where do you, assign minus scores against something? For example, if the contact only looked at your career page and you knew they were only there looking for a job, or your contact is from a location a company doesn't serve. I ended up, having quite a robust conversation with the client when I looked at their analytics and discovered that 30% of their traffic was coming from Russia. And I said, do you have offices in Russia? Do you serve people in Russia? And they said, no, not at all. And I said, well, why is all this traffic coming from Russia? Well, our SEO person thinks that all traffic is good traffic. And I said, well, in fact, that's not really very good for your getting to know people. And it's not building you a marketing sales funnel. It's just driving traffic. And if that's all we want to do, we could just throw a ton of money at Google Ads. So, that's where we really want to make it clear to people what we're trying to do. So let's take a minute now and let's talk. I know this can be an overwhelming diagram, but let's talk about how we create a marketing qualified lead. Now, let's say, for example, we have a new prospect and they have come to us, and usually they have come to our website and we might have driven them there from a social post or something that's happening. And we would have then data about that person. They might have given it up by downloading something. And we really want to determine the best approach to identify or engage optimal contacts. Now, I think the way I like to talk about this, and there's a chapter in the book that I wrote called Don't Propose on the First Date. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that. So I think we can all, if we use dating as an analogy, we can think back to when we first meet somebody and they say, would you like to go out for coffee? When we go out for coffee with them, there is a very different dialogue going on there and a very different conversation because we know very little about them. We want to know, where were they born? Where did they grow up? What did they do for a living? And as we start to get to know somebody, we ask questions in a certain kind of way. Now, if we were meeting this person for the 10th time and we were going out for coffee, now we're going to talk about, how work was going last week, and we're going to get a little bit more intimate. And we need to think about that when we're first getting to know people, when they're brand new, versus an existing contact list versus an existing customer list. There are different ways to talk to each one of those audiences. And why I say don't propose on the first date is, we remember when we first started using the idea of a form or a landing page. I remember a few years back, I would submit my name on something because I was really interested in the content. And literally 10 seconds later, my phone would be ringing and I'm getting a call from a sales rep from that company. And many times I took the call and said, I'm not ready to talk to you. I'm just interested in this content. And quite frankly, I haven't even had a chance to read it yet. So we know then that determining the best approach to identify these people and the way to identify them. Now, if we are able to make that connection and move them to the next phase, which would be to get them on a contact list because they converted on a conversion point, we want to review those people, figure out if they're coming back and if we can start to establish a lead score. And then we have a very formal process that we've established where marketing does a handoff to a sales rep. And because they've hit that MQL or that SQL scoring algorithm, and then we've got a way to deal with that. So I highly recommend you use this as a bit of a roadmap in your own business to start to mark out just how you want that marketing sales funnel to work. So we're going to talk in a minute about how to design it, but it's really important that we're very clear on how it's going to work, because I've also dealt with companies who had really great content campaigns and they started driving a ton of leads to their business. And as per that bullet point I talked about at the very beginning, they were dropping leads left, right, and center because they didn't have the right process to identified about how to manage them. And that can be just as detrimental to your business as not having enough leads in your business. So now, this is the magic slide. And I want everybody to maybe pull up in another screen, if you don't mind. It'd be great if you could pull up your own website in another screen and take a look at it. This is the magic slide. Every single page on your website should answer the question for the visitor, or not just a visitor, but your ideal buyer. This assumes you've done a buyer persona map or buyer persona. You've documented your buyer personas. We taught that class at another session for Influence, how to develop a buyer persona. Your buyer persona identifies what kind of content you need for them, what they're interested in, how you need to talk about their problems. So let's just get that picture in our head of our ideal buyer. Every single page on your website needs to answer, what is this? So when they hit that page, what is it that they're looking at? How does it apply to that buyer? What do I need to do to buy it? Can I afford it? Now, questions 3 and 4, I want to take a minute to talk about, because many companies that we work with, after we do an analysis, they do a pretty good job of answering question 1 and 2, but they do a terrible job of answering 3 and 4, especially service companies. They don't explain what you're actually buying if you're going to work with them, and what it's like to work with them. And they don't explain the steps to get engaged. And so that's where a lot of companies fall down. And that's what the buyer's trying to figure out. If I said yes to this company tomorrow, what happens next? And the can I afford it one, especially for services companies, people hate to put their pricing up on the website. Now, if you're a B2C company, I get that, you know, you want to talk about your products and you want to talk about pricing, and a lot of people do a good job of that. But if you're a B2B company, they do a terrible job of it. They don't want to discuss pricing. There's always a way to discuss some kind of cost. Here's a range in our engagement services. When you start working with us, we do an analysis program and it costs this, then we scope your work. There's always a way to do it. It's the 4th question asked, usually the 3rd or 4th question asked in the buyer's mind. And so many companies today just do a terrible job of explaining this. And so go through your website and see whether it answers all of these steps. What is it? How does it apply to me? What do I need to do to buy it? Can I afford it? And really, if the answer is no to any of these questions, you need to go back and rethink the content on your website. Now, I've done just a web page formula here, and quick little, parlor game I like to play. There's 3 main areas that people look at when they hit your website within the first 5 seconds. They look at this is whether it's the home page, an interior page, they got driven to a blog, they landed on a landing page. They look in the top left, the top right, and then dead center. Top left, they're looking for your brand. Who is this company? What is this company? What's your value prop, or what's your category that you're in? Top right, they want to see a call to action, and dead center, they want to see your value proposition. So what we have put here is a very simple web page. Your brand in the top left, your call to action top right, strong value prop, repeat the call to action. Tell me what would happen if I do not buy from you. Tell me what success looks like. Spell out a 3-step plan to engage with your product or service. And very simply, if you use this formula on every page of your website and your landing pages, you will start to create that web page that makes you money. And you are starting to build a very strong marketing sales funnel, because now you're leading the buyer through this. And now when they start to convert on a point or do something so that you can respond to them, you're now starting to get them in here. Sorry, I sorry. I had the wrong slide in there. I apologize. We have a workbook right now, and I want to make that offer for everyone, that we have the workbook, Building a High Performing Marketing Sales Funnel for Your Business. And I know that's an ugly URL. I've got to do a better job. I was supposed to take advice from Monica on inserting a QR code, and I forgot. So I'm sorry about that, Monica. I kind of screwed up.
We'll definitely make sure that it's also in the follow-up email so people can easily click on it there as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've got a slide about our web presence health check that we do for people. I'll come back to that in a minute, but I want to jump to some success stories. I want you to see this formula in action. Okay. Because I think that's the best way to bring it to life. So we started working with a company that is an IT company, what we would call a Microsoft partner, an IT company in Northern Ontario. And for any of you who aren't familiar with the geography up here in Canada, Northern Ontario is very remote. There's a lot of mining companies up there. There's a lot of forestry companies up there. And this company came to us and said, our website just isn't performing and we don't know how to fix it. And I took a look at their homepage and I said, yeah, I get why. There's a lot going on here. I don't know where to look from an eye tracking perspective. When I look to see, in my simple, analysis, top left, LLOYD research group. Well, it doesn't say anything about IT. Top right, you're a Microsoft partner and you want me to search. That's what you're asking me to do here. And I don't know what to search for yet. And then dead center, the right solutions for your business, very vague, not differentiated. And there's some success stories. I might click on that. There's an about us thing. This website was very old. It didn't function very well. So we worked with this company to take them through a value proposition exercise to really crystallize that message. We then mapped their buyer personas so we could figure out what content they need. And then we applied this formula. What is it? How does it apply to me? What do I need to do to buy it? Can I afford it? And the after is this, much stronger value prop around how it's actually Microsoft solutions that we can help you with your operations. We helped them a little bit, reposition their brand so that word IT was in there, that they very well were positioned and they sell geographically to Northern Ontario. And we really segmented what people were coming to them for, either to change IT systems, consolidate into one database, or they needed leadership to help them grow. But what we discovered as we were doing our digging about what does it take to buy it? We discovered that this company, because of their geographic location and their unique position in the marketplace, oftentimes would help people access grants to pay for digital transformation. And so a big part of their business was helping them get funding. And I said, well, you're bearing the lead. A lot of people want that help. So we developed a guide to funding options, which was the conversion point, that valuable offer. We built it out on a page that really made sense. And then we cleaned up the navigation so that you could see their services and funding options. And so this was really using the formula. What is it? What does it take to buy it? What is it? Does it apply to me? What does it take to buy it? Can I afford it? Well, you absolutely can afford it because we're going to help you get funding. So they weren't talking about pricing here, even though they do sell Microsoft licenses. It was more around what the first step of the engagement would look like and how they could potentially get that funded. So what we found was the outcome for this company is that it really created a focus for sales efforts, and it provided the sales professionals with an important relationship builder. And they were able to use that get funding for your software as a guide that they could put in social media, and they could use it a whole bunch of different places. And it led to a very strong landing page. It created a powerful differentiator for them in Northern Ontario and in the Microsoft partner space. And they doubled the size of their list in the first 12 months, which I think is really impressive. Now they doubled the size of the list, and now their next step is to really start to engage that list and work with them. Another company we worked with was, again, another company in the Microsoft Dynamics space. And this company, again, was doing a ton of implementations. This is a systems integrator. They integrate IT. And it was just very messy. It was very busy. There was a lot in the navigation, a lot of drop-down boxes, not a strong value proposition. So we worked with them and realized that their strength in the marketplace was taking the guesswork out of an implementation. And we realized that in the buyer journey, people came to them after they had made a decision to buy Microsoft. Therefore, they had been spending way too much time in the previous website trying to sell the idea of a CRM. When people had already made that decision, now they want to know who they could partner with. So this whole idea of we take the guesswork out of implementing this product for you, again, cleaned up a bunch of things on the homepage. And then we had guides around taking the guesswork out of budgeting for an implementation, taking the guesswork out of project timelines, taking the guesswork out of user adoption, taking the guesswork out of how you were going to start the project and what the next step would be. And this served them really well to the point where they tripled their lead generation and started to get a lot of recognition from Microsoft and were able to start putting these great awards on their homepage. The messaging really allowed them to differentiate themselves in a competitive marketplace, which attracted Microsoft. The content developed was supported by Microsoft, and as a result, many leads were passed to them, and lead generation tripled in a 12-month period. So I think that this is a really valuable exercise in how cleaning up those things really can help. Monica, is there anything you want to chime in here? I know you've got some great case studies up your sleeve as well, but would you agree that following this formula can create a really dramatic uptick in your demand generation and your lead generation?
Yeah, Marie, presenting the information in an easy to read format, an easy to consume format. I like how you have that formula of answering these questions as people go down the page, because the reality is that, I mean, I don't read every single word on a web page.
Right,
I look for the key points. I look for the headlines. I look for those calls to action. And then if I'm really interested, then I say, okay, where is the more detailed information that I need? And so answering those questions as people go down the page. And the other thing is that if you have your call to action all the way at the bottom of the page, more than likely, they're not going to click on it.
They'll never get there.
Yeah, exactly. People don't scroll to the bottom of a page. Do you need the information that's at the bottom of the page? Yes, because there are people who will get there. But for the most part, the people who are looking for an area to download information, get more information, they want to do it immediately as soon as they hit the page or pretty quickly. So making sure that call to action is at the top, making sure you are clearly telling people who you are. I mean, we talk about that even just in email marketing. If you don't have your logo in your email, they don't know who it's from, because most of the time people don't even read from names in their email box, So it's really important to say who you are and get that ask out of the way very quickly. Now, if they're not ready to give you that information, they can scroll down and start to read, and then they know where the call to action is. They know where they have to input their information or what they need to click on in order to get more information from you, give you their information, whatever it might be. It's very clearly stated at the top.
Absolutely. We're going to open it up for questions right now. And it looks, Monica, like we might have a question. Do you see the question there in the question box?
Yes. So it says, how do you see higher ed sector with a longer lead conversion time versus a more conventional B2C with a smaller items and shorter buying cycles?
This is a great question. I love this question. We do a lot of work with, we've done work in the last 2 years with a company in the higher ed space. I think when you look at the complexity of sales today, it doesn't matter whether you're selling a, $100 widget or you're selling a $25,000 engagement. You need to look at the sales. You really do need to understand the sales cycle of your buyer. And it means that you're going to go through peaks and valleys of how you connect and what you're sending them and when you engage. I often say it'll take about 12 months for a content marketing strategy to start to pay off, because oftentimes with clients we work with, their sales cycles are at least 12 months long. And higher ed is a particularly difficult space because they might only buy something once every 3-4 years, if that. So oftentimes that's a great time to use a thought leadership strategy to be really differentiating yourself on a topic in the marketplace that it can be linked back to your company, but you know is also an important topic for that space. Right now, as an example, there's a lot of people talking about artificial intelligence and how it applies to the education sector. And the client we were working with was doing AI, and it's still not trusted. AI is still something that is complicated. People don't really understand, and it's not trusted. And especially when you're trying to apply it to the education sector, people are scratching their head. So that's an opportunity to really use a strong content marketing strategy, because your content can be really about educating, doing good work in the safety of using artificial intelligence. So you would want to be using that kind of content. And then you would really want to be tracking, because what's going to happen is you're going to want to build a list as big as you can when you're in a long sales cycle. And then you really want the right lead nurturing programs, and you really want to be taking them back to pages that really explain, here's a topic we're talking about. Here's how it relates to you. This is what you're going to need to do if you want to fix this problem. And here's roughly what you should be spending. Mm-hmm. And you could even use that formula in blog posts. So I think I've always said, and no offense to any of the B2C marketers are on the call today, but I've always said that B2B marketing is really hard because of the complexity of the sales cycle. And that's how you want to map your content strategy to that.
Yeah, I totally agree. If you're nurturing somebody and over, a month, 1 month period, but your sales cycle is 6 to 12 months, what are you going to do for the next 5? What are they going to do for the next 5 to 11 months? They may forget about you, or if they're only getting the newsletter, that doesn't really show the breadth of your services or everything you can offer them if they buy with you. So really understanding that is going to start to dictate how long that nurture needs to be, and what all the touch points are. It might not be just a marketing touch point.
Right,
it might be your sales team touching. It might be an SMS message reaching out to them. It might be a social media. So it's all of your marketing channels combined.
So what we usually do is we look at a buyer persona, we figure out the 3 most emotional triggers that a buyer could have around what the problem is. And then we usually try to write a pretty significant guide or ebook or something on that topic. And then we can use that over a series of 9 to 12 months, because you can then, once you push it out there and everybody downloads or does something with it, then you put them into a workflow that might run over the course of 6 to 8 weeks. They might be getting something once a week. They might be getting something once every 10 days. And it relates back to that. Did you have a chance to look at page 35? It really explains how you need to do A, B, and C. That's as simple as it needs to be. Then you take a pause and a break, and you put the next one out. And then you run that for a 6 to 8 week cycle. You take a pause and a break, you put the next one out. That should give you 12 months of content right there. And you're doing it in a very value add way. You're not doing it in a pushy sales way. So for the person on the call who asked about the higher ed, that would be the strategy right there I'd use for them, because they love research. They love good content, but you can just reiterate through a 6 to 8 week workflow, which can all be automated. And then you give them a break for a month, and then you send out the next guide. And we've seen that work very successfully to really nurture and manage. And it has a lot more value, to your point, Monica, than just a newsletter.
Yeah. And Marie, when you have your CRM and your marketing automation platform combined, then your sales team understands then, what did this person originally talk to us about? What were they interested in? So then the sales team has that opening to say, okay, I see that you downloaded this ebook and you also read this ebook and that kind of thing. And so it becomes more of a conversation, and the sales team can also nurture that person verbally over the phone, through their emails, et cetera. So it's marketing and sales really working together.
Absolutely. Do we have any other questions?
I don't see any in the chat or in the Q&A at this point.
Okay.
Um,
So one thing I just wanted to go back to the slide, sorry, that I just wanted to go back up to for people still on the call today. This is the one I put in the wrong spot. We currently have an offer for a web presence health check and the digital readiness score. And if you're really struggling to understand if your web presence, and I don't just mean your website, but your overall web presence is performing, we will do this web presence health check and digital readiness score. And if you want to see what is contained in that offer, again, I've got a link here that you can, excuse me, click on. Excuse me. Sorry about that. That you can click on to see what's in there. And oftentimes we have marketing and sales professionals using this to show the gap between where they are today and where they need to be if they want to build those strong relationships online. And they're able to show this to management teams in a very simple way to help them understand what they need to do to go forward. So if anybody wants to take advantage of that, please do use that link and go check it out. Monica, I think we're at the end here, and I want to thank Enfluence so much for letting me do the masterclass. I love talking on this topic, and I'm so delighted. I know you're all big supporters of this topic at Enfluence. That's what your software does so darn well. Mm-hmm. And I want to thank you for letting me present the topic today.
For sure. Yes. And thank you, Marie. Always fun to have a conversation about marketing, which is both of our passions. So good to connect on this. And please, everyone on the call, feel free to reach out to either me or Marie or Enfluence or Marketing CoPilot if you have any questions. All of the links that Marie mentioned in her presentation will be in our follow-up email, and as well as more information on this web presence health check. So thank you again, and everybody have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you at our next presentation.